It's Friday, which is awesome. And even though Ed isn't here, we're going to take some time for Club Ed with Stephanie Miller, national syndicated radio show host. Stephanie, we've had a couple of massive stories in the news this week. Let's start with Palin and Dr. Laura.
Well, first of all, Jake, I love that the quitter from Twitter is urging someone else to quit. And using that delightful borderline violent rhetoric, the whole reload thing, to recruit yet another racist to the Tea Party. For those of you that it was really a little too subtle, those signs showing watermelons on the White House lawn, if that was a little too subtle for you, now they have someone that'll just shout the N-word repeatedly at their rallies. Isn't that delightful?
It is, and they're going to go to the Beck's rally, too, or Palin is, and they're going to go and reclaim civil rights. From who? That's what I can't understand.
Yeah. And what I love, Jake, is this started as the best Republican chick fight ever. Dr. Laura didn't support Sarah Palin, said, what's a woman with a special needs child doing running for office? And why is she using her pregnant, unmarried teenage daughter on stage as a prop? This is not someone from the left. This is hilarious. This started as the best Republican chick fight ever. And now she's going, the N-word. You go, girl. It's like Republican Mean Girls. I love this movie.
Sarah Palin goes to a new low, even for her. She tells Dr. Laura to, quote, reload on her racist comments. Welcome back to the Ed Show. Sarah Palin has unleashed her inner grizzly in defense of Dr. Laura and her right to freely drop the N-word. After learning that Dr. Laura was quitting her radio show, Palin tweeted some advice to her. Dr. Laura, don't retreat. Reload. Steps aside because her First Amendment rights cease to exist thanks to activists trying to silence. Isn't American not fair? If I remember correctly, Palin said that the builders of the mosque near Ground Zero had a First Amendment right, but out of respect for others, they should not exercise it. But she thinks Dr. Laura's comments were a great way to exercise her First Amendment rights. So let's take a look. Is it okay to reload on statements like this?
I really thought that once we had a black president, the attempt to demonize whites hating blacks would stop. But it seems to have grown, and I don't get it.
I don't get it. Why won't black people just stop complaining already? We already gave them a black president. So all the studies showing blacks in this country have a harder time getting jobs and housing magically stopped the minute Barack Obama took office. Is that what happened? But Palin doesn't seem to have a problem with those comments. She also tweeted, Dr. Laura, even more powerful and effective without the shackles. So watch out, constitutional obstructionists, and be thankful for her voice, America. Without the shackles? Right? Because she was the one being held down by the man as she broadcasts on hundreds of radio stations all across the country. And Palin wants us to be thankful for the woman who said, if you're gay or lesbian, it's a biological error. Who said, feminism destroyed the sanctity of motherhood. What happened? I thought Sarah Palin was the champion of women. Does she think the feminists who got her the right to run for office destroyed motherhood? Finally, Dr. Laura once also told her mother that she should place her autistic child in a home because, quote, he might not be fixable, and she needed, quote, to have a life outside of this torture. This is the woman Sarah Palin is supporting. This is the person she thinks should reload. All right, now let me bring in Reverend Al Sharpton, president of the National Action Network. Reverend, is Dr. Laura right? When Barack Obama got elected, did we just magically solve all the racism in the country?
I mean, it is so absurd on its face. The fact of the matter is that we still face a nation with structural inequalities. I mean, blacks in national data are almost 2-to-1 unemployed. We still have a huge gap in education, in health care, as well as in the criminal justice system. I think that what the election of President Obama was a very, very progressive step. I think America grew a lot, but if we're to act like we're at racial equality, that is an illusion, and I think that anyone grown knows better than that. I think we must give America credit for progress, but progress is not arriving at the destination of having a racially equal society.
So what do you think is more offensive, Sarah Palin backing Dr. Laura saying the N-word 11 times, or backing the context of what Dr. Laura said? Because around the N-word, she said some pretty loathsome things and stereotypes about black folks. So which part do you find more troubling? I
think the context. Clearly, I don't agree with the word. About 3 years ago, we all came out, civil rights groups like ours, saying bury the word. Many of us have used it, so we said let's go against black hip-hoppers and artists and comedians as well as whites saying it because it's wrong. But aside from the word is the context. She not only talked about blacks since President Obama seems to be doing more in terms of whites, in terms of demonizing was her term, whites. She inferred that if you're in an interracial marriage and feel that you're being treated wrong or things being said by your in-laws, maybe you shouldn't be in a marriage. I mean, she took shots at a whole bunch of things contextually that are racially insensitive, to say the least. But what is amazing is she says this, and then when people like us respond, she says, oh, I have the First Amendment right. She does, and we have the right to respond. You can't say things and then tell everybody else, shut up, you can't respond. We merely responded with our First Amendment right.
So what's the right answer here? Because, you know, I heard the whole thing, and she said, oh, black people have a chip on their shoulder. She didn't even listen to what the caller's issue was. She's made all these assumptions. I don't think the N-word is necessarily magical. I understand your stance on it, but the context was worse. But what do you do? What do you do about Dr. Laura? What do you do about Sarah Palin 100% backing her?
Well, I think that what you do with Dr. Laura is you express to those that subsidize her advertisers and the radio stations, that a lot of the listeners and a lot of their consumers think that is insensitive and don't want to spend their money with people that would subsidize that. I mean, if I did it on my radio show, if you did it on your shows, people have the same right. That's their right to say, I don't think if I'm going to buy your product, you ought to advertise with people that use certain things that's offensive. Then it's up to advertisers. With Sarah Palin, I think the irony is on August 28th, next Saturday, when many of us will be marching on Washington, remembering Dr. King's dream, she's going to be at Lincoln Memorial with Glenn Beck on that day after she just told this woman to reload on this racially insensitive language. I think people need to understand on that day, as we remember the real dream of Dr. King, what is Sarah Palin thinking about a dream when she tells someone to reload racial insensitivity? That didn't offend Al Sharpton or Nash Action Network or Media Matters. It offended the black caller who was a listener of Dr. Laura. And when the woman said that's offensive and called her on it, she said, I'll say it again. No apology, no thinking it through, no remorse. She kept loading. And now Ms. Palin says, reload.
Thank you so much for joining us, Reverend Sharpton.
Thank you.
Always interesting. And, you know, Sarah Palin being on where Dr. King gave that speech might be violating hallowed ground. I think I've heard that argument before. So now for more, let me bring in Eric Boehlert, Senior Fellow at Media Matters for America. Eric, apparently this is all your fault for quoting Dr. Laura. What's the matter with you?
People hate when we post their transcripts in full context and let people listen to and hear what they say. This is sort of typical of what we hear from this sort of conservative commentator. You know, they get caught saying something bigoted and offensive, and rather than really take responsibility, they play the victim. You know, there's a mob out to get them. Look, free speech, the First Amendment does not guarantee you the right that someone will advertise on your show. It does not guarantee you the right that people won't be offended. This notion that Media Matters took her free speech away is absurd, and for Sarah Palin to double down on that and claim that, you know, Dr. Laura's free speech is under attack is absurd. There's just no truth to it, and people are offended, and Dr. Laura, again, doesn't want to take responsibility. She wants to play the victim. That's what the conservative commentators always do.
All right, Eric, I get Dr. Laura, and all you're doing is quoting her and letting people decide. But how about Sarah Palin? Because now, look, conservatives do guilt by association all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, and now is it fair to do that to Sarah Palin in regards to Dr. Laura?
Well, she's doubled down today. I mean, she's now posted a long defense of Dr. Laura. She's on the record saying she backs her. She's on the record, you know, attacking people that have called Dr. Laura out for being insensitive and bigoted commentary. So she's made it plain that she absolutely thinks Dr. Laura is in the right. People do not really have the right to criticize supervisor. And again, no one's taking responsibility here. They're playing the victim. Sarah Palin, basically her job now is to play the victim at the hands of the so-called liberal media. So again, she's doubled down, and people, I think, have every right to ask for all the candidates that Sarah Palin has endorsed in the fall. What do they think about Dr. Laura's comments? Do they think Sarah Palin is right? Maybe they should start weighing in on this as well. Sarah Palin has nationalized this debate by weighing in on this matter.
That's an interesting twist. I hadn't thought of that. All right, you guys are sneaky. All right, thank you, Eric. Stop quoting people. All right, now let's get some rapid-fire response from our panel.
And it was interesting. Palin compared Dr. Laura's situation to her own, saying she felt compelled to resign as governor because she was being similarly shackled, and she felt that Dr. Laura would be even more effective with the shackles removed. Kind of an inappropriate slavery reference, but gets a little bit into her mindset here of weighing in this otherwise really sticky situation where there doesn't seem to be a whole lot to gain for her.
I don't know. I seem to recall that when we were up there in Alaska, she was saying that she was resigning because she thought it was the best thing to do for the states, the people of Alaska. So it was quite a different context. From her own Facebook page now, she says, I can understand how she, Dr. Laura, feels shackled by those who would parse a single word out of decades of on-air commentary. A single word? Excuse me? I and obviously many others have been shackled too by people who play games with false accusations, threats, frivolous lawsuits, misreporting, etc., in an effort to silence those with whom they disagree. It just seems to me that, what Dr. Laura did repeatedly was so over the top, beyond normal, acceptable limits of speech, that even she felt that she should quit.
And she...
Suppose Senator John Doe puts forth a constitutional amendment that would outlaw abortion, even in cases of rape or incest, and he asked you to attend the announcement and support him in that. Would you do it?
I would. Yes, a proposal like that, I would stand by it.
Let's be completely clear about the facts here. There is no place in the world and no time in history where restricting women's reproductive rights makes a people or a nation more free or more equal. These extreme positions on abortion are, without any question, a war on American girls and women, and the fact that there are women who are both complicit and participatory in it is really neither surprising nor unprecedented. It has always been true, and it is incredibly important that we recognize that despite the fact that we can be very proud of these women and as politicians, that the question is, how do women as citizens fare on the other side of them either being elected or not elected?